So staying true to form, as I said earlier, there are going to be different perspectives, ideas, beliefs, and values regarding the Common Core state standards. The most frustrating part of being the moderator is not being able to voice an opinion. But hopefully when we get to the question and answer period, we'll be able to discuss this in more detail. Our next keynote presenter is Dr. Eric Smith. And again, I spent time reading materials and looking at people who would balance out as much as possible what the perspectives are in this area. And if I recall correctly, Dr. Smith, you were the commissioner in Florida with Jeb Bush, correct? Just after. So with that being said, Dr. Eric Smith will present another perspective on this.
Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure to be with all of you this evening here at Coastal Carolina University. It's a great facility. I think I've told all the administrators here and the faculty members and those in governance here just what an impressive facility you do have, and I know you're very proud of it. Great to be also invited to be a part of this forum. I'd like to thank the dean for all of his work in getting me in the right parking spot and all his staff in making the arrangements. You know, I drove 6 hours up from St. Augustine to be here this evening, and it's terrible to drive because my wife told me it was really bad to sit there with your laptop on your knees while you're driving, and because you think constantly about what are you going to say tonight, and how do you want to modify, oh, I don't really want to say that, I want to hit this. And now then, after I've listened to Dr. Orrin Smith, and you need to keep us separate, so when you ask for questions of Dr. Smith, you can get those directed correctly. But after listening to Orrin and his presentation, I think that I really ought to throw all my remarks out, and start over again, because he raised so many critical points that really do need some discussion. And so I'll start tonight by saying that what you're doing here this evening and the service that's being provided by those that are speaking, the organizing it and providing this, and those that are here in attendance tonight is really critical. I'll go through some things. I am going to cut some things out just for the sake of time. But I would say that I've been involved with the work around the Common Core. I've been involved since the beginning, and I'll explain that in some of my remarks, and throughout the development of the Common Core. I've been involved in the work related to at least one of the consortiums. I'd say I've been involved in the work related to the birth of both of the consortiums for the assessment piece, and certainly understand some of the conversations that went on and how those things have evolved over time and what they mean. And I am definitely in the Dr. Orrin Smith camp, is that I'm one of the boldest critics and the hardest kicker of tires of what this is about, and whether it means something good for our children or not, and whether it's something that I wanted to, particularly back in my day as state commissioner, whether I wanted to sign on to or not. But I'm not the kind of guy that just simply wants to look at it afterwards and sign on. I wanted to talk about the creation, and was this the right thing for our country to be even engaged in the conversation around. So those are the things that I intend to talk about tonight, and hopefully can touch on without sounding too terribly disjointed some of the points that were raised in the previous presentation. But before I do any of that, I want to say thank you to the teachers that were up here tonight, and the folks from your local district, because they did a fantastic job and speak to, I think, a very important point as well, which I'll reemphasize later on. And I know I only have 15 or 20 minutes to go through this. So it's great to be in South Carolina, bottom line. Great to be here with all of you. Tonight's discussion is a topic that is absolutely critical. Education is important not only for our children but our nation, and how parents, educators, and policymakers define our expectation for our schools is critical. Education is not standing still in America, nor is it standing still around the world. It is a focus of attention in countries around the globe, in industrialized nations. The quality of instruction that children are receiving and the output of the schools in terms of the types of lives that they're able to help promote and create with young people. The demand on education continues to ratchet up. It's not the schoolhouse of the old idyllic past. And so there are three things that I'd like to touch on tonight in my remarks. One, why standards? The dean mentioned some of that, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper, at least from my perspective on it. The second, why the Common Core standards, and the third, with the Common Core standards, what's next. And so I think the first part about why standards. Well, yeah, I started in the I'm an old timer. I started in the business 42 years ago, in the early 1970s in Orange County, Florida. Places I've traveled to. I've been superintendent in Danville, Virginia for a couple of years. I've been superintendent in Newport News, Virginia. I've been superintendent in Charlotte, North Carolina for 6 years, just right up the road. I've been superintendent in Anne Arundel County, Annapolis, Maryland for 4 years. And I served as commissioner for the state of Florida in education for 4 years from 2007 through 2011. Blessed to have all those opportunities to serve the public and the children in those communities and states. I learned a lot about the power of expectation and how much expectation matters when I was just up the road in Charlotte. Superintendent in Charlotte, it was a great 6 years, absolutely incredible. And we were realizing what we consider to be good success in our K-12 system in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. But couldn't understand why we had a breakdown when we moved kids into high school and getting them into advanced placement courses. We just didn't seem to break the barrier down in making that happen. And we continued to have small enrollment, and we didn't have good representation of our enrollment in the advanced placement program. A staff member of mine came in late one night, and as often it is, and he said he thought he developed a program, a computer program that would take a student's PSAT scores and help give some prediction about their ability to perform on an AP exam. Well, we developed that in Charlotte, and as a result of that process, we transformed what was going on in advanced placement, opening up the opportunity of more rigorous coursework to thousands of more students in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. By helping to support kids that did have the ability. And what we found the problem was that in the past, we had been basing it on what we assumed kids would be able to do, the recommendations on the assumption of what a child was able to do or not able to do, instead of the hard data that verified what a student was doing or was able to do. We made that transition. We were able to transform, and as a result, thousands of students' lives are different and greatly improved because of what they had an opportunity to do to get prepared to go into college and meaningful careers. The moral of the story is that expectations matter. They matter a lot. When I started teaching back in the early 1970s, just like the dean's example, it was wide open. I loved teaching mathematics in the junior high school. We hadn't innovated yet. We hadn't become a middle school. We were a junior high back then in those days, and we didn't have standards. We had a course directory that kind of told the topics that would be important, and we had a textbook. And the things that I was passionate about in mathematics, we spent a lot of time on that in my class. And the neighboring math teacher, the things he was passionate about, he spent a lot of time on as well. The trouble is the things that I was passionate about wasn't necessarily what he was passionate about. And the issue of what the expectations are during a course of a year, very important. Because neither one of us as math teachers knew what we needed to cover in order for children to be successful the year after and move on to high school graduation and success in college and careers. So we missed out on that boat. We had a lot of fun, but we missed out on that boat, and our students were the ones that really suffered from that process. But so things have changed. I would mention, so why the standards? Why the standards were needed? We've had all the speakers have mentioned the nation at risk, and I would bring out the two specific portions of the phrases that were really the most direct about the problems that we faced in the early 1980s, according to the Nation at Risk report. In both cases, the educational foundation of our society are presently being eroded by rising tide of mediocrity that threatens our very future as a nation and people. The author of the report went on to say, as previously stated, if an unfriendly foreign power had attempted to impose on America the mediocre educational performance that exists today, we might well view it as an act of war. The key phrase for me in this was that both statements referred to mediocrity, the mediocrity of what we are expecting of our students was woefully inadequate and posed risk for our children and our nation. As a partial response to a nation at risk, the states did move on to developing standards in the 1990s. In 2001, 2002, bipartisan Congress passed the No Child Left Behind Act, signed by President Bush, that went into law, and states really started to take a look at their standards. The problem with the standards that that were developed across the country is that their evaluation of their merit was vastly different from state to state. Some that were very strong and did push towards college readiness, and some extraordinarily weak. Some that were very vague and unclear, some that were much more concise and explicit for the expectations of what children should do and be able to demonstrate knowledge on. The fact that they were so vastly different in America led to huge problems. I took over, as I said, as commissioner in Florida in 2007, and we took on as one of many projects, one of many major areas of focus, the issue of high schools. And we wanted to get our high schools right. We wanted to figure out the problems that we were having in the high schools in the state of Florida and bring some solution to those challenges. And so we looked at what does the data tell us in Florida? The things that plagued me and kept me up at night as commissioner. One is we had a persistently low graduation rate. And when you broke it down racially or economically or by English language learners, it became abysmal, totally unacceptable. But across the board, on average, it was too low. So graduation rate was one. And the second, when we looked at the students that did graduate from our high schools and went on to our community colleges, we found in many cases the percentage of students that required math or reading remediation in community college was extraordinarily high. A total disconnect between the investment, the energy, the talent, the genius that was going on in K-12, the work, the effort that was going on in K-12, and what was expected at the post-secondary level. Those challenges needed to be solved. So when I went to meetings with state chiefs, we'd talk about these things, and we had reason for a variety of reasons for coming together on issues of discussion. But the normal meetings that we had with state chiefs, we would spend time talking about these kind of challenges. And very apparent that this wasn't a problem unique to Florida. That standards, the variability of standards, the strength or weakness of standards, the problem of assessments that were high quality or low quality assessments that were driven off of the standards, the issue of a persistently low graduation rate and persistent high percentage of remediation in post-secondary education was a problem that was shared by many, some more than others, but shared by a vast majority of the states. So about the startup of Common Core, and again, I'm not, how that all evolved is probably several volumes of a book someday. But I would share you just one very personal story. I was at a national meeting of state commissioners, and I was not staying at the hotel where the meeting was taking place, and I had to drive in. Always worried about not being on time. I got there probably 30 minutes early, sitting there in an empty room waiting for the meeting to begin, and the state chief from Illinois comes in, Chris Cook, and Chris and I sit down, we start to talk, and I say, these standards things shouldn't be so complicated. I mean, wouldn't you think that in Florida, Algebra 1 would be the same thing as Algebra 1 in Illinois? And if Algebra 1 is the same thing, maybe we can figure some things out that make some sense. And because, for me, I'd like to have some truth in advertising to mom and dad back in Florida. That when you're getting an education in Florida, it stands for something, and that you can be assured that you're getting as good an education as students elsewhere in the country. At least that would be something that would satisfy me a little bit, that the quality of your education in Florida is going to be, we have a way to know whether or not when you get things back from your school, that little Johnny or little Susie are being prepared in a way that is suitable, is acceptable, is equal to what children are getting elsewhere around the country. And I think that's an important point. It's an important point for parents in terms of parent empowerment to have that information. If you have a bunch of fragmented, like we've had in America, if you have a bunch of fragmented cases where you can't really know that, you have to divine it out of National Assessment of Educational Progress and then interpret that to your school and maybe something's going well or not with my child. Your ability to make decisions about choice with your child, where they're educated, how they're educated, and so forth, whether you should be down there pounding on the table complaining about it or whether you should be supporting the daylights out of it and giving it more effort, all comes back in the way you can have a better ability to know. So these things became important to me as commissioner and found that at least in Chris that morning at that meeting, I should have saved the napkin because I said, why don't you and I just get together and talk about it sometime? I'll fly up. I'll fly up to Chicago. We can meet someplace at the airport and let's talk about your standards, our standards, see what they look like, see if we can't do something together. And through the course of the day in that meeting, by that afternoon, we had 30 to 40 other state chiefs that had similar problems, same concerns, wanted to have the same conversation. On that little napkin, I remember talking to Chris, I said, Chris, can you do it this week in April? And he said, no, I got a state board meeting, but I can do it the next week. Okay, let's do that. That's how detailed. By the end of the evening, we had a meeting set. 30 to 40 chiefs were going to join us. I can't tell you exactly how many showed up, but it was close to 40. We ended up having NGA and CCSSO organize it for us because we're kind of busy back home doing our own business. But NGA and CCSSO helped organize the meeting and get it kicked off. But it was a big meeting. It was an important meeting because state chiefs were there talking about whether this is a worthy effort or not. Should we take this back to our states to discuss and explore? Is something more that needs to be done about this? And certainly we weren't in a position to make any kind of commitments, but we wanted to listen to each other talk about their concerns and see if there's something jointly that we needed to do together as a group. Well, like I said, in my opening, I'm one that kicks the tires as hard as anybody, so staying a skeptic. We went ahead, we did do work. So what's, my third point about what happened after that, at least in Florida, I can't talk about other states because all I know is I was knee-deep down in the office every night until about 8 o'clock at night, and quite often it would be after the day work was done, that's when I'd start working on issues around standards, and I'd have my staff that was working on it. We'd have a blast out to parents and teachers and policymakers and business leaders in the state about proposed standards and getting reaction to it, and we'd have big debates and discussions in Florida on the phone with other people drafting these things up. And so there wasn't any question. We have a very, I'd already 2 years previously, I had just gone through adopting new state standards in Florida. We had a pretty good process for how do you engage people in the process of standards. We weren't going to bring in Common Core without that kind of engagement. So we did that in Florida, and I know other commissioners did as well. So we contributed a great deal in drafting, reviewing, and so forth, the standards. We were critically involved, and I was prepared to walk away at any moment that I didn't think these standards were the kind of things that would help my children meet the objective that I wanted to see, which was successful graduation and enrollment in community college, university work, or careers, particularly post-secondary work, without the need for remediation to take place. Time goes on, and Common Core gets adopted by a number of states, and so third point about what next. And this is really important because the conversation around Common Core gets vastly confused about the segmentation of it. And when it gets confused, the value of the conversation diminishes, in my view. You kind of lose the point. And so for the last 2 years, there has been an incredible, you heard it from the teachers and district up here, incredible amount of work around the Common Core. Perhaps you heard it from the state legislature because they're calculating the adding machine or subtraction machine is going on, what's that going to cost us? And so all those things are critically important. And so for the last couple of years, at least, more than that really, it's been an inordinate amount of work going on around these standards since the states have adopted them and so forth. And no state that didn't adopt has done anything on this. So they have no skin in the game. But those that have done it. And the work that has been done isn't because of what Common Core is. The work that had to be done is what Common Core is not. It is what the Common Core is not. As has been said by other speakers, the Common Core isn't a curriculum. So if you're going to implement the Common Core, the state, the district, the schools, however it's organized and structured up in your state, have to develop the curriculum to go with that. They have to bring the teachers together, talk about the methodology, the pedagogy, how it's going. The Common Core is not lesson plans. It's not. You can't find them. It's teachers that have to spend time developing the lesson plan. And I love this up here. Let me tell you, as a commissioner, as a curriculum guy, I love teachers talking to teachers about lessons and how best to deliver that concept. That to me is exciting work, powerful work. So it's not lesson plans. And so that work had to be done. The Common Core is not an assessment. It's not. So, you'll put out the hook when it's out. But so the Common Core is not an assessment. So when you talk about, and one of the questions was the fuzzy math. The standard isn't fuzzy. The standard is very clear. What it's asking for is a very higher order thinking skill issue. It's asking for application. It's asking for 2 or 3 step processes in arriving at an answer. Not things that you can memorize and do it on a true and false multiple choice test necessarily, but you have to really work through it. And so asking for more complex work, which is what would be required at college. I'm right on that, I hope. And they tell me I am. And what would be required in the world of work. So so where's the problem then if something is fuzzy? Well, if something is fuzzy, it's not so much with the Common Core as its way the standard has been translated into a test item. Might be asking a student to do something that looks fuzzy, in which case throw the item out, or it is that the process of instruction, the curriculum that's gotten to working through a child looks fuzzy to an out. If it is in fact fuzzy, and I don't know if it is or not, I'm not one to judge on that piece yet, but the point of it, the matter is that the Common Core is not an assessment. It's not curriculum. It's not instruction. It's not a lesson plan. And so those debates are different debates and need to be dealt with as South Carolina's working on. You're working on some of those issues right now, and I think every state needs to do that gut check. This needs to be done. Is this the right thing? And I'll close on maybe I'll close on this, and then 2 minutes. Okay, I'm going to do a minute and a half, and then I'll close early. So, we got in the Common Core, working my tail off on that piece. Very engaged, very involved. I don't like to leave things to other people. So I was literally at meetings on the phone, meeting on the Common Core. Very involved. No one from D.C. was calling me to do a darn thing. I will tell you that. One guy that was involved from the start, from writing it on the napkin, the date we're going to meet, through my leaving office in 2011, no one from D.C. ever called me one time. Never involved in a meeting where there's somebody from D.C. that was telling me what to do or what to think or you might consider even. Wasn't there. So knowing that the most important part of standards is going to be how do you assess it so we can really measure comparability and so forth and make sure our kids are being treated with the best quality education possible. So I did get heavily involved in the discussion with other chiefs around how to develop a test. And I think evidence to the fact that this was state-driven is that we have 2 consortiums in America, and soon we'll probably have a third, maybe a fourth, maybe a fifth, developed by vendors or other means. Florida now is working on another strategy. But back when I was commissioner, we went with the Park Consortium. We helped to develop the Park Consortium. We were on the board of governors for the Park Consortium with other state chiefs. We were critically and heavily involved. Our teachers were involved. Our work was part of the work of Park. It wasn't being done by by any federal intervention and so forth. And we made decisions about whether we wanted to be a smarter, balanced state or we wanted to be a park state. And I think one of the great things and statements about this process is that if you look at the assessment discussion that's going on around the country, it is pretty varied. There are solid park states, there are solid smarter balanced states that are committed to it, and that's great. I think that's great. And there are also states that are aggressively looking for a third way. And I think what for states, and again, I'm not a commissioner anymore, so I'm just talking as the old guy. What's really important is being able to, the discussion first has to be is what's important to us. What's important to us in our state, what's important to our parents, what's important to our educators, and how best can we help that happen? Is it through one of the existing consortiums and taking a leadership role in that, or is it through another way of assessing and looking into it? So on that note, I think I'm an old curriculum guy too, a curriculum instruction guy, not an administrative guy, and I would say that the good news about all this discussion debate is that the focus is on the right thing. No matter what side you take on the discussion about this, we're focused on the right thing. We're focused on trying to move the trajectory of the lives of our children to a better place, so more will graduate with a meaningful high school diploma that will lead them to a meaningful career, and that will lead them to opportunity at college, universities, without the threat of remediation, which usually means that they're dropping out and going to a local who knows what. On that note, let's keep working on the trajectory. Thank you very much.